My name is Sarah Naarden, and I'm visualising your virtual smiles. I sense I've landed in an open-minded community who have heartfelt intentions. You might wonder why a mother and humble architect who calls herself a co-creative designer is here. Well, I never imagined that I would be speaking at a World Parliament of Spirituality or on a panel with the most inspiring of Indigenous elders and scholars. I'm here to share something close to my heart, and that is designing for healing, bridging environment and spirituality with a light touch. Firstly, Wamanjaka, which means welcome, come with purpose, in Bunwarang country of Naarden or Melbourne, the land I am speaking from. I acknowledge the Yulukut Willam people from Bunwarang country, the traditional custodians of the land, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I extend my respect to other Aboriginal people joining us today, and I'm deeply honoured to be sharing this panel with UN Elder Uncle Max and PhD scholar Dr. Tyson Yunkaporta. His book, Sand Talk, has profoundly shifted my mindset around indigenising our thinking towards more meaningful reconciliation. Thank you, Dr. Yugandhar, for your radical vision bringing us together towards global oneness. Such diversity and inclusive conferences are critically important in this time of spiritual, social and ecological crisis. Creating a conscious legacy can feel like swimming against the tide at times, and we are in this together, but we are not the same. Learning from our differences will deeply enrich us. My intention today is to create some moments where we fly together in synchronicity. With our heart wisdom, we share connection. With our mind, we share creativity. And with our gut wisdom, we share courage to see patterns of purpose with agility in our actions. It brings me great pleasure to share a concept I designed for this event. It is an inner compass wayfinding tool, and it aims to attune our healing stories as a path through challenging spiritual, emotional, and social landscapes. PRIME is an acronym for Precedence, enabling a sense of belonging and ask, where are you from? Realisation empowers a sense of being and ask, where are you at? Interconnectedness embraces a sense of becoming and asks, where are you from? So where are you going? Musings gather the insights of belonging, being and becoming with awareness of external patterns and forces. And emergence enables agency for insights to manifest as foresight in transitional times. And if there's one thing you take home from my talk, I hope you feel empowered by PRIME to transition from a comfort zone to a courage zone. And I'll demonstrate how I use it by sharing my own healing journey. In Precedence, we establish a sense of belonging, asking, where am I coming from? Well, healing is a complex journey, but has pivotal moments of simplicity. 8 years ago, my world was turned upside down and inside out. My baby James was born with a neurological condition causing fatal epilepsy. I was suddenly that person people felt sorry for, living in the Royal Children's Hospital, which I also helped design. Unfortunately, James passed away at 5 months of age, and it felt so surreal. I tried so many healing techniques to ground myself. I discovered books on neuroplasticity, mindfulness. I tried art therapy, dance therapy, sound healing, all flavours of spiritual self-help. What I found most helpful was immersing myself deeply into the sacredness of place and creating communities of care around me. I discovered the well-intended awkwardness around bereavement, and I felt a void around meaningful rituals to normalise death and the cycles of life. Until several years later, the enriching process of sorry business ceremony I was experiencing as part of the Kapalulungu elders in Velgo East Kimberley in the Western Australian desert. Several months into my bereavement, a much welcome invitation came along to design an Aboriginal healing garden with Wurundjeri elders at Monash Health in Melbourne. It was part of a Close the Gap project aiming to make hospitals more welcoming for Aboriginal people who were often living off-country for specialised treatment. Dealing with my own trauma was one thing, but I was nervous about the pain narratives of intergenerational trauma. I decided to establish common grounds by leading with vulnerability. I felt a big gap in the loss of my Indigenous education and was willing to unlearn and relearn in the process. Whilst in the Cockatoo ward with my baby James, my mum found a book in the attic that I wrote when I was 8 years old. Inspired by Indigenous dreaming stories, I titled it, How the White Cockatoo Got His Yellow Crest. It traces the story of a white cockatoo who was feeling lonely. All the other birds around the waterhole were colourful and vibrant, so the cocky decided to fly to the rainbow to be painted in colour like the other birds. The kookaburra laughed at the idea. The wise old owl advised against it, which made the white cockatoo even more determined to prove himself. He started flying to the rainbow but became distracted, so he flew past it to the sun and burnt his crest. Well, the story opened up all types of generative discussion about healing in our initial workshops. I invited Jifa Greenaway, the first registered Indigenous architect, to assist in leading the protocols of community engagement. Right on the left are the artworks from the Dandenong Kuri youth group, which were used in the graphic design of the planters. I set up crowdfunding campaigns and pro bono engagements with engineers and designers, and with radical collaboration, we were learning together with mutual curiosity. I came to the realisation my role as a designer had shifted. From an architect who rarely let go of design control, I was now a design facilitator, holding space for stories of empathy and trust. Upon completion of the healing garden, I realised I loved the community engagement process, but couldn't keep doing such work as a volunteer. I trained in social enterprise incubation to set up Design Think Lab and to take on similar projects. And during this time, I was fortunate to experiencing the traditional healing of women's ceremony law camp with Kapalulangas, which I mentioned earlier. I was deeply humbled by this experience. I sensed the need to help my own elderly in my community by transforming their loneliness. So I started another social enterprise incubator called Hug House, an eco-friendly small home used in a rent-for-care exchange, a concept borrowed from Netherlands, where my father's heritage is from. Unfortunately, the business model didn't stack up, and I felt quite deflated and exhausted by the process, but I realised I was more drawn to the social design research. And in the interconnectedness of becoming, or putting that out to the universe, I waited, and then was offered a place in a PhD cohort for co-design called Wonderlab. The cohort comprised of international transdisciplinary designers with diverse backgrounds in psychology and anthropology. Yet the focus on social design was not balanced with my passion for ecological innovation. So yet again, I set out on a new path to help young people like my own kids manage their anxiety around climate change and create transformative hope through design. Musings is where I gather insights from belonging, being and becoming, and attune the inner compass with the forces and flows of outer landscapes. In the many play shops with Wonderlab, we experimented with icebreaker tricks like describing how you feel as a weather metaphor. Well, in this moment, I'm feeling still. This image reflects deep biophilia, the way nature nurtures. And here I recall my mother's ancestral line when I see pockets of Scottish wilderness like this unattended for thousands of years. Many of you may have heard of forest bathing, prescribed by doctors in Japan. Even looking at scenes of nature can lower our vital signs and cortisol levels. Research suggests that patients heal quicker in hospital rooms that have a view of nature compared to a brick wall. And we know nature nurtures us, but how do we nurture nature? How do we repair our broken relationship and sense of entitlement to it? The current sustainability ethos alleviates our overconsumption guilt by feeling good about purchasing carbon offsets. And in post-COVID recovery, surely we can incentivise more green jobs in eco-tech businesses and attract just some of the brain drain back from the internet of everything, colonising Mars and the moon. Shouldn't we focus on decolonising the Earth? Shouldn't we move from political sorry to thanking our first people in navigating 80,000 years of climate change adaptation? So, to be the change, I question the values of a design thinking community of practice which takes a human-centred design approach. Instead, I'm relearning how to transition to a human-led co-creative approach. A transition from ecosystem to ecosystem, which requires a more transcendental goal, like keeping in mind the impact of the next 7 generations as led by Indigenous thinking across the world. Such an approach requires, again, an unlearning and relearning new ways to incrementally evolve sustainability. Last year, I found myself co-creating curriculum for Regenerative Design Studio with RMIT Industrial Ecology students. We became immersed in fun experiments like baking non-toxic bioplastics from food waste. Our students worked with mycelium, the root of fungi. One of them discovered that bees needed fungi for their immunity. As a living material, our student grew the mycelium in moulds to make street planter boxes, then filled them with bees attracting wildflowers, and then went guerrilla gardening in urban laneways, a creative ecology alternative to toxic graffiti. After starting the studio with skepticism, it was so rewarding to see the students present their work with such spark in their eyes. For Melbourne Design Week, I had the opportunity to take regenerative biodesign out of the universities and into a public forum. Biodesign is considered a new field where materials are cultivated, sequester carbon, displace non-renewable resources, and can be 3D printed. Here is Marie Clark on the panel, a Mati Wemba Wemba Indigenous artist who's describing the cultural practice of remaking an eel trap based on a 10,000-year-old Indigenous technology. And it was used to repurpose to collect plastics polluting our waterways, and also consider under the banner of biodesign, which is regenerative by nature. And here, school children and volunteers were invited to participate in the cultural weaving of the 11-metre-long water cleaning sculpture made with river reeds. In Emergence, we're connecting to the musings of the insights while projecting our foresights. A few weeks ago, I was thrilled to begin a local council environmental champions project in hope to create more ways for urban kids to nurture nature, so required after a prolonged period of homeschooling and way too much screen time. My proposal is to create a living lab using design workshops, podcasts, and exhibitions for hidden stories and innovations within our local community. Part of the ambitious proposal is to recreate a similar eel trap with Marie Clark and Mitch Maloney to assist in the plastic pollution of our local waterways. Point of difference, though, is to create an internal skin made from fungi designed to absorb toxins from the water. Such bioremediation processes have proved successful with other local citizen scientists. But a living lab establishes such a project in part of a holistic master plan to also address social isolation, disconnection to nature, and loss of cultural exchange. This photo is a demonstration of Wayapa work, an Indigenous movement practice like Tai Chi. It was created by, or co-created by Gunai man Jamie Thomas, who was showcased here practicing at a fundraising event for the Aboriginal Healing Garden several years ago. You can just imagine similar workshops could be made available in a micro festival, raising awareness of the water cleaning sculpture proposal. It could be titled Co-Evolving Sustainability with Our First Nation People. And it could be led by local Bunwarang advisors. It may also include Indigenous cooking workshops, traditional honey harvesting, native flower planting days, wood carving and wood burning workshops, poetry slam for decolonising local memorials, to name just a few. So in conclusion, bridging healing with ancient futures takes time and patience. It has been my absolute pleasure to illustrate Prime for the first time, and with heartfelt connection, creativity and courage, I thank you in joining me today, and I look forward to hearing the wisdom of my co-panellists.